Hi, I'm Pam Cameron, the author of Sport, Shipdog of the Great Lakes. Do you like dog stories? Well, I've always liked to read about dogs and their adventures and how they've helped people and how people help them. So I decided that I would write a book about a dog, a real dog named Sport, who helped a lot of people in his life. Sport was a big dog. Here he is. If you look at that photograph, you can kind of guess, there's a life ring around him. That reminds us of a boat, doesn't it, and water. And if you look in the background, there's a ship, because Sport was a ship dog. He lived on a ship for 12 years, the longest I had ever heard of a dog living on a ship. I'd like to share some of those stories in the book so you can see how he was a helper and how people helped him. There's Sport. Now, before I tell you about what he did, I need to tell you about lighthouses, because Sport was around lighthouses. Now, here's a puzzle lighthouse. Have you ever been to a lighthouse? If you have, perhaps you entered the door, and then inside you saw a spiral staircase going up and up and up, and you were able to climb those stairs to the very top of the lighthouse. If you haven't done a lighthouse visit, perhaps in the future you will, because Michigan and the Great Lakes area has lots and lots of lighthouses to visit. Now, at the top, just what we think, a light. And if you look carefully, this light goes on and off. That was the signal that the lighthouse sent to the boats that were out on the water. And when a boat would see this light shining in the night, they would know exactly where they were. Let's pretend this is South Haven's lighthouse. And they would see the on for a second and off. They would know exactly where they were. It was like a map, along with being a big light in the darkness. Now, Sport was connected to lighthouses because he lived on a ship that brought all the supplies to lighthouses. You need some fuel, some coal and kerosene, and they used to use whale oil to light these lights. Sport was on a ship that would come through the water and bring supplies to a lighthouse. Let's find out what he did when he got to those lighthouses. Here he is. I like that he's smiling. Have you ever seen a dog smile? As I show you some pictures, see if Sport's smiling. Or the next time you see a dog, see if that dog is smiling. Now, I'll read a few passages or share the information about it. Sport, when he was a puppy, was lost in a town called Milwaukee. And a storm was coming up, and no one knew that he was there. You can see the sailors are getting ready. They're getting their boats ready. They didn't notice the skinny puppy wandering the docks. No one noticed him when he barked nervously into the wind. Well, luckily, there was a ship there, the Hyacinth. And the Hyacinth had lots of crew people on it, crewmen. And they looked down and they saw that puppy in the water. And Albert and Clifford took a small boat from their big boat and they went down in the water and they said, "We're going to rescue this dog. Come here, pup. Come here. We'll help you." They called out, "Come on. We'll get you." Just as they reached the dog, Albert reached out and he wrapped his hands around the puppy and pulled him to safety. Now, here's a photograph of the ship. It was so long ago, we don't have a color photograph, but you can tell it's a picture from a long time ago. There's the big ship that took Sport on board. When he got back on the big ship, the Hyacinth, some of the crew gathered round. "Look at his paws," said Albert. "They're webbed like a duck." "What kind of dog is he?" said Clifford. The captain ran his hands over the dog's head and down to his haunches. "He looks like he's part Newfoundland, a Newfie." The captain knew that Newfies are great water dogs. Their double coat keeps them warm in the cold water, and their webbed paws, well, they help them swim, just like a duck. An idea formed in the captain's head. We could use a good ship dog. This dog could be the one. Everyone liked the idea. They decided to name their new friend Sport, and that's how a homeless puppy found a home on a ship. Weren't they nice to take him on? Now, here's the big ship that Sport lived on, and right in this corner, right at the stern or the back of the boat, there's Sport. And they're letting him walk all over the ship. And here's the pilot's house, where the captain and the first officer and second officer would steer the boat and watch out to see what was out on the water. The water they were on was Lake Michigan. Here's a map of Lake Michigan. Maybe you've been to some of these places on Lake Michigan, or you'll go there in the future. Aren't we lucky to live near Lake Michigan? Now, the ship was always bringing supplies to the lighthouses. Here's Sport following someone, and they're putting everything on: fuel and gas, food for the lighthouses, mail. They even brought books for the boys and girls who live at lighthouses. So here's what's happening. They've got it all stored. They're storing things down here below deck. They're ready to go. "All cargo lashed and tight?" "Aye, aye, Captain." "Anchors pulled?" "Aye, aye, Captain." "Heave ho, we're off." And they shuttered off, and they chugged away, and they went to the Cana Island Lighthouse. So there's our lighthouse that we talked about, and here's one that looks almost like it. Supplies in the small boat, and this is the lighthouse keeper. In this case, a man who kept track of the light. He lit the light at night. There's his wife, and we know that the women helped, and they're also women lighthouse keepers. This just happens to be a family, and 1, 2, 3, 4 children. They were always excited when Sport came. The children squealed in delight at the sight of Sport bringing them their supplies. When everything was unloaded, it was time to say goodbye. Sport and the Hyacinth crew had more stops to make. "See you next time, Sport," the children said. So I like to think Sport was on his ship with the crew, but he got to see lots of children when he went to the lighthouses. Now here he is. He loved to retrieve things. And he was part Newfoundland, and he was part retriever. If you know anything about those dogs, you know they like to be in the water, and they like to retrieve or get things. And he's retrieving a tool bag that the crewman has dropped in the water. Did you know dogs can play baseball? Well, Sport was on a baseball team. Here he is, and these are all the men that worked on his ship, and they said, "Sure, you retrieve balls, Sport. You can be on our team." Now again, another photograph from 100 years ago. And if you look carefully, There's Sport right there, and the baseball bats are right around him. They put a little decoration around him. He's part of the team, isn't he? If they took a photo of him. Let's see. Now, Sport helped his crew a lot. As I said, he brought the supplies in. He was on the baseball team. Have you been in any fog lately? Sometimes if you're in a car and it gets real foggy out, you just can't see anything, can you? Well, when you're out on the water, like ships are, it gets foggy out there. And that's what happened. Now, dogs have really good hearing. You know that. The crew didn't hear another ship out on the water, but Sport did. His ears twitched up. He ran to the bow of the ship, and he let out an explosion of barks. Albert ran to Sport's side. Albert could just make out the outline of a passenger ship approaching. They may not see the Hyacinth in the fog. The captain grabbed the whistle cord. One long whistle, then two short. Woo! 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 That meant we are a stopped ship on open water. So the Hyacinth signaled only because Sport let them know something's out there. So the two ships might have hit each other, but the crew on board the passenger ship, it was over here, they heard the signal and they pulled away just in time. Now, one thing about having a dog is sometimes they don't listen to you, do they? That's why we train our dogs. Well, Sport, when he would go places, he liked to look around where he was, get off the ship, go around, see what was there. And he did that one day in Chicago. Oh, a big city. And he did not hear when the captain blew his whistle. He wandered too far. Well, the Hyacinth, Sport's ship, had to leave. They couldn't wait. They felt bad, but they needed to leave. And there was a man walking around that area, and in those days there were a lot of stray dogs without collars or chips or licenses. You could just kind of take a stray dog, and he needed a watchdog. So he took Sport. Is Sport smiling here? No, he doesn't know what's going on. He knows this isn't right. Well, lucky for Sport, the next day there was a man who did know Sport, and he was in Chicago, and he said to the man that took Sport, What's going on? This dog belongs on the Hyacinth. He needs to be returned to his ship. So the Iceman was driving an ice wagon. He took Sport down to the dock, and there was a big passenger ship, and the captain of that ship said, yes, we'll take Sport back. So Sport got on this very, very big ship. It was a passenger ship, and that means families and children were on that ship taking vacation trips. And the children heard that there was a dog on their ship. They got all excited. Would you have gotten excited if you were on a big ship and you heard there was a dog and they had rescued a dog? So the children all came down to where they had Sport down in the fast freight area. Look at, there's a chicken down there in boxes. And the children all wanted to hear the story of the ship dog. The dog who had been rescued during a storm, who had joined a crew and lived on a ship. And he helped bring supplies to lighthouses, and he played baseball. And he looked out for his crewmates on the Hyacinth, and who had made friends all around the lake. Does that remind you if you've ever hugged a dog? That night, Sport got back to his ship, and you can see a smile again. He had good friends to play with tonight and important work to do tomorrow back on his ship. Have you ever had a dog or a cat sleep right by you? Sport did. Everyone took good care of Sport. And that night, Sport fell asleep to the sway of the ship and the sound of the water. He was a ship dog, and this ship was his home. Now, Sport had a pretty fun life, didn't he? With 12 years on a ship, a long time. Now, I'd like to share that last picture of Sport so we can be reminded what he looked like in real life. He was out helping the lighthouses, wasn't he? Keeping the lights on the lake, so the lake was safe. Lake Michigan was safe, so all the people out on boats, the boys and girls that were on that ship were safe because the lighthouses were shining their lights every night. I brought something for fun for you to think about. We still have to be safe around water, don't we? So remember, if you're ever by a lake or a river or swimming pool, make sure the adults in your life know where you are, and for sure, wear a life preserver. Sport would be happy that you do. Now, next time we're together, we're going to talk about and do an experiment to figure out how deep Lake Michigan is, because we need a lot of water. We have a lot of water in our lake. We want to be safe. The ships need to be safe. They can't touch bottom. So next time, you will find out how you can measure the depth of water. Thanks so much.